Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennison.
And I'm Ginelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, please visit tableandwellco.com. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Table and Well podcast. This is episode 11 of season 3, and again, as always, so far in the season, we are in the middle of our maturity series. Wow, revisited, and we just finished with our child level of maturity, and great conversation in there. And so we are going to be moving into the adult stage of maturity. And as always, you want to do a quick review of the first two before we get into this, because they do all build on each other.
Right.
So we want to give you kind of just a recap of what's happening. So again, they do build on each other, have a compounding effect. You can't fully complete any stage without having completed the one before it.
Right.
And I think that's really important.
Yeah, no matter how capable you feel as an adult, if you still have gaps in that infant and child maturity, you won't really get to live fully into your adulthood or into your parenthood. Yeah.
And so as we're moving into these next steps, or these next phases or next stages, and we kind of do this review, just check and see kind of where you're at. If maybe these are some of those maybe quick things that you need to maybe go back and shore up. I say that always wrong, but shore up. Before beginning to attack this one. And I say that, but we're all adults most likely listen to this. And so you're going to be working on multiple areas in this process. But regardless of that, I want to give a quick review of the different maturity levels. So mature infants, they know how to receive. They can quiet and rest. They can regulate their emotions, self-calm, return to joy from every emotion. So we call them the big 6 emotions. So sadness, anger, disgust, shame, hopeless despair, fear. That's the other one. There we go. We forgot one. And so being able to return to joy from those. And then you can also synchronize or attune to others. And then mature children are able to
take care of themselves, can say what they think and feel and appropriately ask for what they need, can do hard things, and take responsibility for their choices.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And you'll know when a person has graduated from the child level of maturity to the adult level, because he will shift from being a self-centered child to a both-centered adult.
I love that phrase, both-centered.
Both-centered, adult. Or we'll say mutually satisfying.
Yeah.
While a child needs to learn me-centered fairness, how do I make it fair for me? An adult learns we-centered fairness. How do I make it fair for us? Mutuality is the trademark of an adult, because he can take care of 2 people at the same time, himself and one other person.
Yes.
Notice
that
as we're talking about adulthood, it is not me and many other people.
Correct. That's
There's
a very
also
good
something
point. Very good point.
To say here that really that's that parent level of maturity when we start to learn how to take care of a group of people.
Yeah.
Having established we know how to take care of ourselves first.
Yes. And one other.
Right. So actually have the practice of that. And if you see this in life, if you're not capable or someone's not capable of taking care of themselves and just one other person, they're going to struggle as a leader in a leader situation.
Right. If they're trying to manage and take care of others, multiple people.
Usually they'll sacrifice themselves in the process, or someone's needs are definitely going to go unmet.
Yeah, for sure. So part of moving from child to adult is this wondrous thing called the rite of passage.
Yeah.
And it's something that we really don't do in our culture anymore.
No, we don't.
But it still happens everywhere else around us. Like you can go to any, I won't say go to any, but I know in different countries, there's still a major rite of passage.
Right.
If you look in the Jewish culture, there's the bar mitzvah, the bat mitzvah. It's the girls and the boys moving into adulthood.
Right. Hispanic culture has the quinceañera.
Yeah. And so there's a form of it in the States, kind of in the South, really, the what's it called, the cotillion or something like that, to where there's like the coming out of childhood into adulthood.
Right.
But
as a general American population, we don't really have this, and we kind of wait until someone is getting married, literally getting married on the day they're getting married, and we're like, "Oh, congratulations!
Yeah,
you are now an adult." I guess.
Right.
And our daughter has actually felt a lot of frustration and pain around this because she's 24, having just earned her master's, and really up until then didn't feel like this blessing into adulthood by those around her, because there's nothing to be celebrated that is worthy, which is just doesn't even make any sense. But also too, we as parents, like, we're learning about this and learning what this looks like, and we just see and feel such a value for it.
Yeah, and we talk about, one of the closest things to it, you have your graduation or your
a high school graduation party,
yeah, but again, that's not maturity. That's like an achievement,
right?
Or
an event
that that you finished this thing. You did all the,
check. Yeah. Like, well, you survived the days. Let's be honest.
That's true. You're not
like
wrong.
You survived the days of education.
Right.
And often too, like, let's say it's an open house.
Yeah.
Like, everybody comes, but no one's really blessing that student or that young adult into the next phase. Yeah.
That next stage of life.
And even saying, like, not only are we blessing you from childhood into adulthood, but we're also walking with you.
Yeah. Yes.
Which, anyway,
yes.
What we're not saying here either is, remember, the adult maturity stage actually should be starting at 13.
Right.
Not 18.
Not
so
18.
Even the closest thing we have is much further down the road than what might be best.
Correct. And like we're talking about in the different cultures that we're talking about, in the Jewish culture and the Hispanic culture, it's around that 13 to 15 age bracket where those things happen. And so this rite of passage, it requires people who have made the transition to recognize, so those that have gone before you, that have already made that transition, to recognize that you have made it and you are ready to make the transition as well. So it's literally them calling you into the next stage of your life.
Right. And calling you into manhood or calling you into womanhood.
Yes. Yeah. And that statement there too, because it's really important, I think, for in a rite of passage, one of the main pieces in that is, like, only men can call boys into manhood, and only women can call girls into womanhood.
Right.
Truly.
Right. And where are we seeing that?
Yeah, where are we seeing that?
Nowhere. This podcast is not about rites of passage, sadly, and honestly, partially because we don't have an answer yet.
Right.
We just know there's a high value for it.
Yeah.
And so it's a continuing conversation we have and a continuing curiosity we have. Of course, we're a bit outside of that age and stage of life, and we've gone back and done what we have been able to do to bless our kids into their adult season long past this 13 window. I feel like we did a good job helping them with their maturity, but we didn't understand the idea of blessing and releasing until they were young adults.
Already released.
Technically out. But in saying that, we still cannot let go of this concept. We still see it and feel this need for, quote unquote, full grown men to be released into manhood, because they never were. And women being released into womanhood because they never were. And so we're just kind of putting this out here as hey, if you've got a younger child, begin considering this. We don't have a lot of great resource on it. I think there are some resources on the website, but Power of a Parent's Blessing is one concept, or one idea of how to write a blessing over your child and release them into their next stage. But I think there's something too with the physicality of an actual rite of passage, where something physical is occurring, whatever that might be. So
and again, the reason we're talking about it here in this adult stage of maturity is because this is the space where it should happen.
Right,
exactly. It should be happening in this space, in that transition between child into adult.
Right.
And so it's really, we believe it's hugely important, and it's something that we're still wrestling through to see how we incorporate that, or what that could look like as a community and society.
Right. And if anybody out there is doing this, like we've got it, or we've done things that have really worked, please reach out. We would love to hear more about it. We see ourselves probably navigating this space with adults who need help as they're working through maturity with us, for us to be the elders who bless them into their next adult season.
Yeah.
So we will take all the ideas we can get, and we are raising up grandchildren that we would love ideas. So
absolutely.
Please let us know.
Yeah.
And we'll be happy to share those on social media and anywhere else, so that the audience listening to this can find it as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so are we ready to get into the adult stage of maturity?
Let's do it.
All right.
Let's do it.
So adult stage of maturity begins at 13, and it goes until the birth of your first child. So remember, again, there's an arc of learning here. You don't turn 13 and know how to be an adult.
Right.
But we are now, as a community and as a personhood, about the work of becoming an adult.
Yes.
And the primary goals of an adult is to take care of two people at the same time. So remember, we should have established between 4 and 12 our ability to take care of ourselves.
Yep.
So now we're practicing what it looks like to take care of ourselves and one other person. And obviously within this window of time, 13 to the birth of the first child, there is another significant other that comes along in order for that birth of first child to happen.
Yes.
And so we get to practice this. Hopefully we're getting to practice this between 13 and prior to marriage.
Yes.
Hopefully, well, which let's be honest, in reality, many of us have not learned how to take care of ourselves and one other person. And then we get married, and then we're like, oh no.
Children in the mix.
Right, exactly. And we almost kind of like wait until marriage to
try to figure this out.
Yeah, to make it important to learn how to take care of another person, when what a gift it would be if we were learning this from the time we were 13, so that when we get married, it's not a new concept to either of us. It would be a game changer.
It would be. Yeah. I think one of the things here is that's important to say too, this is for the parents out there, just in child development period in this stage. So, and Ginelle's mentioned a couple different times through different podcasts, but our brains do go through a significant change between 12 and 14. Literally will destabilize, and our kids go a little bonkers. And we know that to be true if you had teenagers or if you've all that.
Yep, that is no scientific evidence is needed.
For that.
There's plenty of physical evidence for that one, but it is true.
But what's happening there, and we can move on, but what's happening, just so you guys understand, it is a natural thing. But what's happening is their brain is starting to move from this me-centered space to this we-centered space.
Right.
And they're looking for belonging and identity on their own outside of their primary caregivers, outside of their family, outside of that. They're looking for, where can I belong? Who sees me? Where can I go and find my identity and be my own person? Right. Outside of the space of my home.
Yes, within a group.
Within a group.
So you think about raising a child, and really through that whole time where everything is very me-centered, that family is investing into the development of that individual. Well, and then the brain shifts. And a lot of parents feel like they've somehow done something wrong, but it has nothing to do with that. It has literally to do with the brain changing to take that identity that's been built and shift it from something that has been, I don't know, coming from the outside, I guess might be a good way to say it, to coming from the inside. Yeah. Where now I have a chance to own who I am and display that in the world, and do that within a group and use that identity to then find belonging. So if it's not a secure identity, I'm in trouble.
Right. It can, yes.
Yes. Yeah. And but if it is a secure identity, then finding that group belonging is something that happens a lot less painfully and happens a little bit more intrinsically. And we talk a lot to parents who have children this age, and we talk about the importance of having peer belonging at this stage. The brain is no longer interested in what those caregivers say, to be honest. And it's not a personal thing. It is that, well, I am going to figure out actually who I am for myself now. Thanks.
Yeah, right. Yep.
But I'm not doing that alone. I'm going to go look at the faces of all my peers. Yes. And they're going to reflect back to me who I actually am.
Yes. Yep. And then you find your identity and belonging amongst your peers.
Right. Yeah. Yep. It's very peer-based belonging and very peer-based identity building at that point. So we encourage parents of children between the ages of 12 to 14 to ensure that they have a very healthy peer belonging opportunity that's there and available to them, whether that looks like a sports team or a youth group or whatever it might be, family, community, that they can begin to gather their identity from, because they will throw out basically the identity that they've built with you and try it back on. I don't know how else to explain it, but they no longer go into the closet and just put on the clothes without question.
Yeah.
They are now questioning everything, as you know, if you raise these kids.
Right.
And that includes who they've discovered themselves to be with you.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's,
So, yeah.
So many, like 4 thoughts.
I know,
but
right?
It's okay, because we can.
There's so many places
we could camp
go
there
with this
forever too, but
conversation.
we're not going to. But this is a good space to talk to just about. Again, we've always said age and stage of life, and so this is one of the spaces between 13 and the birth of your first child where there's a lot of different stages. In there, and so understanding that as you're walking through that. So again, that maturity is being living in your God-given potential at every age and stage of life. And so like there's multiple in this window of time.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
There's so many stages.
Right. And it's what, 10 years, 15 years maybe typically.
Yeah. Yep.
And you think about 13-year-olds are still in junior high, and then high school graduation potentially.
13 to 16 is totally different.
Right.
16 to 18.
13 to 14
is completely different. No, you're right.
Like you're learning to drive, you're learning to finish school and do that much more independently than you've ever done before.
16 to 18, totally different.
Yeah, you're driving a car, you get to go not anywhere you want, but kind of you have the ability to choose that. Yeah, you're gaining all kinds of freedom.
18 to 21.
Right. Now
it's
you're
another
learning
big jump.
How to live on your own and how to establish yourself and how to, hashtag adult and work and pay bills and all that.
All the way to 24, 25, and now maybe you're in a very serious relationship, and life experiences change. You go to college. I mean, everything switches. So there's a ton of different stages in there. But I think some things that are consistent throughout that time in that stage there are these really 3 things that you'll find in young adults. So that, if you want to put a age on it, like that 13 to 21, 2, 3, somewhere.
25. I would give it to 25 in today.
Right.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Name all 3 just right away, because we tend to drag out our lists a little bit. Give the 3 up front and then we'll explain.
So relationship, power, and truth.
Are what young adults are invested in, are concerned about.
Like that's their primary, that's like, I want connection. And I say power, and we'll explain that a little bit, but like there's more, what's the word? Responsibility, more influence, different things like that they start to receive during that age range
and try to operate in.
Yep. And then truth, like straight up, like
what is true to me.
Don't lie to me. Yeah.
Well, it's what is true to me. So my parents have always told me what's true, and I've accepted that for the most part. Or my caregivers have. And so now I'm asking for myself, what is true to me?
Yeah. More so.
Yeah. Which is super, super scary, because for the first time ever in the last 10 years, we now have social media constantly trying to convince our young adults what is true.
Yep. And so,
so you think about this 15 years ago, where did the possibilities of truth come from? They came from within the community or within friendships, or maybe at school, but now it's like globally.
Well, I would even venture to say
being delivered to them in their hand.
I venture to say from the time we recorded this first set of podcasts in the last 4 years.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
The difference between then and now in social media of trying to tell you what is true.
Right.
Has totally shifted.
Right,
in the last 4 years. So let's walk through these, and we'll talk through them as we go. So the first one again is relationships. So as children, the primary relationship is with your parents. Now peer relationships are the most important part of your life. It's important to give your kids some space and let them bond more with their peers. Now, again.
Set them up for success.
Remember 4 to 12. We're getting them in a good space and bringing people in their lives, and hopefully relationships that they can grow with people that have the same values as them and things like that. And so, but that's super important to them. They're looking outside. It's no longer, like Ginelle said, inside. We're looking outside. The survival of the group becomes more important in your brain than your own survival.
Yes. So yeah, that whole behavior that we see in teenagers, let's say, where it's like, well, why in the world did you do that? Like, what were you thinking?
Yep.
And the reality is they weren't thinking. The group was thinking for them.
Group think.
Yeah. And it was more important to them that group stayed together and moved together, period, that there wasn't dissension in the group. Even if it was a dumb idea, they weren't going to create that dissension. And so they find themselves doing things that it's like, what in the world were you thinking?
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Well, yeah. So many things. So now that you're a part of a people group or a community, so you're looking for this, who are my people? What do they come from? What do they believe? What are they doing in this situation? You know who you are by who you belong or bond to, or where you fit in. So your character is really based on your closest attachments.
Right.
That you have.
Right.
When your parents used to tell you, hey, you're going to be who you hang out with. Like, you're the sum of your 5 closest friends. And you're like, yeah, whatever. No, it's 100% true.
Especially at this stage.
Yeah.
Like, your brain is really only interested in that group belonging and bond. And it will form the identity of a young adult very clearly. And this isn't, like, you don't have to look very far to see evidence of this everywhere.
Right.
But it's true what's happening. I think we think, like, oh, Johnny just isn't, like, what happened to Johnny? And Johnny's now acting like all his friends. Like, Johnny should know better.
Right.
No, Johnny's just doing what's developmentally appropriate.
Right, yep.
And how do we then create really healthy space for him to develop in a safe environment with really great people? That goes back to that community idea of creating community and having healthy community so that we're all winning at all stages.
Yep, absolutely. Because, again, you are who you hang out with, because that's, again, how our brain is designed and wired.
And I will say, too, one thing that's just important here, that group identity is actually something that we will carry with us for the rest of our lives. It actually isn't something that, like, begins and ends in this window where we just suddenly think that belonging in the group or the identity of the group is the most important thing to us. That it will continue. This has been a bit lost in our society, particularly after COVID, but it's, you can see this also in adults of, like, why do you believe that? And it's like, well, everybody around me believes it. So it just suddenly becomes like, it's just true.
Yeah, just true. Yep.
And we can check our brains at the door. And again, in our immaturity, we can check our brains at the door.
Yes.
And a mature adult will highly value the group identity, help develop the group identity. But not check their brain at the door. Still maintain their individuality and their individual identity, and be a healthy part of the group that's also helping that group move and honor the individuals in the group as well.
Correct. And that's that part of that arc of that maturity arc in that space. Yeah.
Yep.
So true. Also, with relationships, you live to be part of something that's bigger than yourself. So, like, you desire that. It's like, what's the next cause? What can I change? I want to be part of this thing, even or maybe it's not even that big. Maybe it's just, where's the group? I want to be part of a group. The group is bigger than me. Right. So I want to be part of the group.
Right. But back to your initial point, we do see this a lot in 20-year-olds. 20-year-olds are our best change agents. We see them challenging ideas. We see them thinking outside the box. We see them being curious. We see them full of possibility. We see them challenging what's always been, which irritates the mess out of anybody who's, like, further on in life and has some maybe bigger picture perspective than a 20-year-old does.
Yes.
Because we see them seeing, like, this much of, and I'm holding my fingers up really close, this teeny tiny amount of what is real and what actually might happen in real life, that they're, like, ready to turn a huge ship and they think you just have to why isn't anybody just turning the wheel?
Yeah, right, exactly.
What's the problem here? Because 20-year-olds don't understand maybe what it takes to turn a ship.
Right.
And yet, that's the beauty of having them in our multicultural community, because
yes, that's what I was going to say.
We're sitting around saying, but it just takes so much energy to turn the ship, and the ship's never going to turn. It's just going to take so much time. And they're like,
turn the ship. We're just going to turn the ship. Why not?
Well,
just
while you're talking and debating about all that, just turn the wheel and you'll get there eventually, even if, and they're thinking in a much bigger space, and we waste this.
Yes.
We just like we devalue our elders in our community, we also devalue our 20-somethings who are movers and shakers, because they often don't perfectly align with what we think they should be doing or should be thinking, or how they should be approaching the world.
Yes. And we miss out on opportunities to grow together and change together.
Right.
And because no matter where you are, again, guys, maturity is a never ending thing.
Right.
So in those things, there's things that I can learn from a 20-year-old, and there's things that 20-year-olds can learn from me. But if we're not in community together because I dismiss them and vice versa, then we miss out on opportunity to grow, opportunity to make change, opportunity to just live in a really healthy space together.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about a particular example right now in my life where there's a 20-year-old who has a huge passion about something. And I see her and I see that she only knows what she knows at the stage of life that she's at. And I could say, oh, well, yeah, good luck with that. Or I could get behind her with the wisdom that I carry from where I am in life, and get behind and say, okay, I'm going to help mentor you, or I'm going to help put my wisdom behind you. You've got all this passion. You've got all this energy. God bless you.
Right.
I'm a little shorter on that than I was, when I was 20, but I'm not going to just back off because you get what it's the both and of it. And my maturity is not intimidated by your 20-year-old thoughts. And in some ways, gosh, I need more of that 20-year-old thought in my life, because I forgot.
Yeah.
I forgot what it was to be really passionate. I forgot what it was that anything is possible. And to just get out there and do it with more questions than answers. And so how can we, even if we're older, partner with that? How can we partner with that with our own young adults?
Yes.
That we're like, I wouldn't do that. But yet at the same time, like, okay, you're doing that. And I'm going to stay with you in this and continue to be. And
give you wisdom.
Right.
And be part of that multi-generational community that you need.
Right. You need. Right. Because if I just step away out of criticism and judgment, then neither of us win in that space.
Nope, that's
a little bit of a soapbox, but
no, it's good.
But they're longing to be a part of something bigger than themselves. So feed that.
Yes,
is what I'm trying to say. Feed that.
Feed that engine. Yes, for sure. And then this last one here is your brain's ability to quiet, regulate, and fully control your impulses diminishes, and your body produces estrogen or testosterone into your system. And so, and that we all know that's puberty. And then, and so your brain is already starting to change and destabilize. And then you get this influx of this hormone that just throws everything off kilter.
Right. I mean, you think of a 2-year-old who gets the introduction of all these additional emotions that they never had context before and don't have a body that knows what to do with all of that. The same thing is happening here, where it's like, hello, hormones, now what? It feels like something invaded your body and is now body snatching you. And you feel like that from a kid that you always knew is now not acting like themselves. But again, we get the chance to steward that and bring that forward and just be okay with the fact that that is what it is. I will layer in here, too, that we've talked about this in the biological field of biological development and in the spiritual development.
Yes.
I can soapbox here a little bit, but
go for it.
This is often in the family of God where we kick people out.
So true. Yes.
Like, you can either stay a kid and move into the basement and just serve and not ask any questions. And that's what we would really prefer. Thank you very much. And you can use that 20-year-old energy to serve us and do what we say. But if you start to question everything we've ever told you to be true, and you start to really have your own thoughts, feelings, opinions, ideas, or you display a reaction to something that creates some mess for us, then, we'd really just not rather have that. Go ahead and, like move along, or we label people or we shame people. And what people are doing at that stage is growing through the adolescence of their spiritual walk.
Yes.
It is totally appropriate for someone to reach this stage spiritually and question everything that was once told to them that is true.
Yes.
And to find out and discover for themselves what is true. And if you think of the family of God being that immediate informer initially, they're finding belonging in a group in a different way, in a way that now feels true to them. Not the group that was kind of assigned to them initially because they met God at this church or they were born into it or whatever. But now they're really discovering for themselves, where do I belong? What are my truths? Who am I?
Yes.
And what does it look like for me to live in the world as a believer?
That's so good.
And so we should be celebrating that.
Yeah.
We should be rite of passaging that.
Yep.
And
we don't.
Yeah.
We don't. We do almost the opposite of that.
Yep.
So, yeah.
One more piece in that relationship, in the physical.
Sure.
Developmental and spiritual, but we need the help of our community to know what we should do at that age and stage. Again, with our passion, with our belonging, with our identity, we can't, and the brain doesn't necessarily allow for us to say, this is what you should do, just do it.
Yep.
But what we do need to do is help them explore that.
Yeah.
Provide modeling for that. And oftentimes parents, that young adult, adolescent is no longer, like we said, no longer interested in what you have to say. And most everything you have to say is going to be immediately rejected. Having mentors or community in your child's life throughout this season is just as important as having healthy peers in their life.
Absolutely.
So we had the gift of someone for our daughter that mentored her, and she was such a great asset for our daughter because she's just an incredible person.
Right.
And we were so aligned in heart for our daughter that in the spaces that we knew we could not speak, we could trust her to speak. And it was such a big deal. Like, I can't even begin to explain what a big deal it was. And we know that a lot of our daughter turning out the way she did and becoming the person she became is, you can see this mentor's fingerprints all over her.
Yeah.
Which is so fun. And we could have gotten into a space where we were intimidated by that or offended by that or, oh, she never listens to me, but she always listens to her,
Such a blessing.
It's such a blessing. And it's something that we're not taught to look for, provide for our children, bless, make space for, be in communication about, all those things that if you have a child in the stage, finding them a mentor prior to them entering the stage is also a huge gift.
And just a quick note on that too. So at the time, like we're talking about this right now, it's been 10 years that she's been in her life. And I spoke to my daughter recently, and she told me, she's like, yeah, I called her yesterday just to let her know what I was doing with my life, and just get some input on, and it's like, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
That's incredibly awesome, and it's such a blessing.
Yeah.
Yep. So that second piece in there in these young adults that they're concerned with is power. And so now, again, it's not power for power's sake or whatever, but that is something that should come through responsibility, not just given. It's not a given authoritative whatever.
Right.
It's you're growing, you're moving into this space, and so now you have demonstrated the maturity needed to be responsible for this.
Right. And to take power in this area, and simple things like driving, like that's power. We're giving you freedom and power. We're putting a machine in your hands that could kill someone, in reality.
Yep. At 16.
At 16, you're given the responsibility of managing this well, or maybe a job where there's power. And it's funny because power feels like such a funny word here, in the way of like, well, it's not really power. I don't know if that's really it. But it's influence, I think, is as much of an influential power and a autonomy power
that's
over their own self. control maybe even might be a word, self-control that comes into play here. Most of our 20-year-olds anymore want to be influencers. Why do they want to be influencers? Right. Because it gives them power in the group, their societal group, their peer belonging. They don't just want to belong to the group as a nameless, faceless person. They want to belong as an influencer.
Yeah. And it's interesting because like some of the things that you talked about, like, work, 14, 16, you can drive, 18, you can vote, you get drafted in the military, 21, you permission to drink alcohol. In our society, there's like these set markers that we
begin to entrust you with things.
Right? And we don't really have a schedule, quote unquote, or a way to do that outside of that. As parents and our kids growing up, there's no like, well, you turned 13 and a half, so now we give you this.
Oh, you mean like a ramp up to that?
Yeah, there's no ramp up to any of this.
They just turned 16 and like, here's a car.
I mean, obviously there's driver's training and things like that, but even relationally, we talk about that. There's nothing for, we don't have there's nothing relationally set up that says at this age you can do. Now, we can do that as parents and set things up, but I guess backing all this up to say, as parents, think about that for your young adults and that are in your home, that are 13 to whenever they leave your home, like having some of those markers already in your mind of like, okay, we're gonna start to release you into these spaces when you turn this age, and maybe obviously don't whatever, but just here you go. Here's a little more. Here's a little more. Here's more responsibility. Here's more growth.
And partner with the fact that this is important to them. Like power is important to them.
Yes.
Being autonomous is important to them. Having freedom is important to them. Feeling like they have choices and control is important to them. And not fearing that or not creating this like drudgery of like, oh, I have to hand this over.
Right. Yeah.
But like, what if instead it was kind of what you're saying is like, what if that was something that was anticipated where it is my honor to hand over this authority to you to drive this car. Right. It is my honor and you are fully prepared to be able to do this. And I think the Jewish culture does this 1,000 times better than we do. Ancient culture does this 1,000 times better than we do, where it's like it is known that at some point that child is going to take over the company, over the family business. And there is a preparation, an intentional preparation all the way along the way. So it's not a like, oh man, here we are today. Here you go. You're not ready, but oh well. Just this encouragement to parents today to be thinking about what would it look like to prepare our children for the power that is there, that should belong to them in this window.
Yes. And moving them from, we heard someone say one time, moving them from receiving to responsibility.
Yes. It's so good.
Like as a member of this family, up until you're receiving from me, I'm giving. You're receiving.
Up until about that age of 12.
You're receiving, and then this shift starts to happen at 13, where now more and more things become. Nope, you're a member of this family, so there's a responsibility and an honor and a power that goes with this. So here is this power and responsibility to represent our family out in the world. Here is this,
Another word that comes to mind is capability.
Yes.
Like I am blessing and honoring and providing opportunity for your capability.
Yeah, you have everything you need to.
To function as a member of this family, function as a member of society, at least in this part, right? And it, again, too, is over time.
Yes.
And it grows. It's not like dumping. Right. But can we be looking at that?
Yes.
Can I look at be building my child's capability so when time comes, they're actually ready to stand in that capability?
Yeah. What would it look like to have relational markers?
Right.
Demarcation. So, but anyway, so food for thought. And then the third one here for young adults is truth. You're looking for what's real. You're looking for what's real. And one of the things that young adults hate hypocrisy.
Yeah.
It's like truth. And as you said here too, the note we don't have, but like you said when we're talking about it, is what's true to them. What's my truth. Right. They're looking for what's real, but they're also looking for what's my truth.
Right.
In this.
Which also might be what feels real to me.
Yes.
Not actually what's real or what's actually true. And this is what we're seeing in society today, is that many of our 20-year-olds are are being fed things that feel really true and are resonating for some reason, but aren't necessarily true.
Yes.
But where are the people in their lives that are helping to help them balance that or identify what is actually true without just being another person who's like, that's not true.
Right.
This is true.
Helping them discover,
be curious, figure out for themselves, just because it appears true.
Right.
Is that really true? And how do you discern? Remember back in the child level.
Right.
If they haven't built the discipline and the discernment, they're not going to be able to clearly identify what is actually true.
Yep.
And decide for themselves what is good, because they're going to have all this group identity influence as well, telling them, well, this is just true.
Yeah.
And it's keeping that strong child skill of discernment alive that will help them like return to full truth for themselves that aligns with who they were when they lost their mind.
They lost their mind. Right. There'll be something to come back to it. Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
There is a sense of just like a 2-year-old loses their mind and is like, and then they come back. Your kid's in this adolescent stage and all that hormone introduction. It's like they lose their mind, but they do return to who they are.
Yes.
But this journey, I think, could be less perilous than we see it being right now if we understood ourselves as better guides. Those of us in the community understood our role as a guide and also taught our kids that you have forever guides alongside of you.
Yeah.
You know, that, and understand that there's going to come a point where I, as your parent, am no longer going to be valued as a guide, but there are other people who you have aunt, uncle, brother, sister, these different people, mentor, teacher, that are available to you as a guide as you're figuring this out.
You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review to let us know. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to stay up to date on all things Table and Well. To learn more, start your journey, or get information on how Table and Well can help develop your community, family, or teams to be relationally healthy and authentically connected, please go to tableandwell.org/collab to schedule an interest call, or you can email us directly at known@tableandwell.org.